Key point 1 highlights how shadowing real conversations helps improve natural pronunciation and rhythm. And understanding this deeply requires looking at how the brain and ears work together during language practice. When a learner listens closely to native speakers in real environments, they hear English the way it is truly spoken, full of natural speed, pauses, intonation, and emotion. These are elements that textbooks and scripted recordings often fail to capture. By repeating the exact sounds immediately after hearing them, the learner's mouth muscles begin to adapt to the flow of English. This immediate imitation strengthens the connection between hearing a sound and producing it accurately, making speaking more automatic and fluent over time. Shadowing also gives learners a chance to absorb the music of the language. Every language has its own rhythm, and English is known for its stress time pattern where certain words are emphasized, while others are softened. When learners shadow real conversations, they naturally begin to copy this pattern without overthinking it. They start noticing how native speakers stretch certain syllables, drop some sounds, or blend words together in everyday speech. These small details are often what make a person sound more fluent and natural. Through repeated shadowing, these patterns slowly become part of the learner's own speech, reducing the robotic or choppy tone that many beginners struggle with. Another major benefit of shadowing real conversations is improved listening sensitivity. When learners push themselves to repeat after native speakers instantly, their ears become sharper. They begin to catch subtle differences between similar sounds, identify tone variations, and recognize expressions more quickly. This heightened listening ability makes it easier to understand movies, conversations, and real-life interactions. As the learner becomes better at hearing English clearly, they naturally become better at speaking it clearly too, because speaking is strongly connected to listening. Real conversations also expose learners to authentic expressions, everyday slang, and natural sentence structures. Shadowing such conversations helps learners practice not only pronunciation, but also the flow of real communication. They get a sense of how native speakers link ideas together smoothly, when they pause, how they react, and how they express emotions. By copying this style, learners develop a more natural speaking manner instead of sounding overly formal or textbook-like. Shadowing real conversations ultimately builds confidence, because the learner gets used to speaking continuously without stopping to translate or think too much. This confidence grows stronger each time the learner successfully shadows a sentence, making speaking feel less stressful and more enjoyable. Astor's key point to emphasizes that listening to guides, announcements, and locals increases vocabulary and fluency because these sources expose learners to English that is practical, alive, and used naturally in daily life. When someone listens to a tour guide describing a historical site, for example, they hear well-structured sentences, clear pronunciation, and topic-specific vocabulary that is easy to follow. These guided explanations are usually delivered at a pace meant for visitors, making them perfect for learners who want to absorb new words in context. At the same time, the descriptive language used by guides helps learners understand how English can paint pictures, tell stories, and convey information smoothly, allowing them to expand their vocabulary in a meaningful way, rather than memorizing random lists of words. Announcements in places like airports, train stations, or buses also provide highly useful English input. They are usually short, simple, and focused on action, telling people what to do, where to go, or what to expect for learners. This type of language helps strengthen listening skills because each announcement requires quick understanding in real time. Repeated exposure to this style of English teaches learners common expressions, formal phrasing, and clear sentence patterns. Over time, these familiar phrases become part of the learner's active vocabulary, and they begin to understand and use them naturally in their own conversations. Listening to locals is one of the most powerful ways to gain fluency because it exposes learners to real conversational English. Locals use natural expression, everyday slang, casual phrases, and tone variations that textbooks rarely capture. By paying attention to these details, learners begin to understand how English works in everyday situations, how questions are formed casually, how humor is expressed, and how people react to one another in typical conversations. This exposure allows learners to pick up vocabulary that is current and widely used, helping them sound more natural and modern rather than overly formal or outdated. All these sources, guides, announcements, and local interactions immerse learners in the real rhythm and structure of spoken English. The more they listen, the more familiar they become with sentence flow, pronunciation, and word usage. Gradually, they start understanding without needing to translate, which is a major step toward fluency. The brain begins recognizing patterns automatically, allowing learners to respond faster and speak more confidently. Listening consistently in this way not only builds strong vocabulary, but also creates a deeper connection to the living language, making communication easier, smoother, and more enjoyable. Asterisk key point 3 focuses on how repeating phrases quietly in real situations can significantly boost confidence and speaking ability, especially for learners who feel shy or unsure about their English. When someone shadows English in a real environment, such as a busy street, a museum, a cafe, or a train station, they are surrounded by natural speech patterns that push them to practice without feeling pressured. Repeating words under the breath allows the learner to imitate pronunciation, tone, and sentence flow without the fear of making mistakes in front of others. This silent practice is powerful because it gives the brain a chance to coordinate hearing and speaking at the same time, strengthening the link between listening comprehension and verbal production. As learners continue imitating these sounds, their mouth movements become more comfortable and automatic, helping them produce clearer and smoother English. Another important part of this key point is the psychological benefit it provides. Many learners struggle with confidence, especially when speaking in public or around fluent English speakers. By shadowing quietly, they remove the fear of embarrassment and replace it with repeated exposure to natural speech. Every time they successfully imitate a sentence or phrase, even silently, they gain a small sense of achievement. These small wins accumulate and reduce the anxiety usually associated with speaking aloud. Over time, the learner becomes more comfortable with the rhythm and melody of English, and their internal confidence grows. This developing confidence eventually pushes them to speak more openly and naturally, even in real interactions. Silent shadowing also forces learners to stay fully focused on the language around them. Unlike passive listening, where words simply pass by, shadowing requires active participation. This active involvement sharpens listening skills, strengthens memory, and trains the learner to notice details such as emphasis, linking, and stress patterns. The more a learner practices in this way, the more familiar English begins to feel. Words become easier to recall, sentences flow more smoothly, and hesitation begins to disappear. Slowly, learners begin thinking in English rather than translating from their native language, which is a major step toward fluency eventually. Silent repetition turns into spoken practice because the learner's confidence grows to the point where speaking aloud feels natural. The progress happens gradually and without pressure, making it a comfortable method for anyone who wants to improve their English without feeling nervous. By quietly shadowing real conversations, learners build a strong foundation for fluent, confident speaking. Key point 4 explains why travel environments provide authentic English exposure that learners cannot get from books or classroom lessons. When someone travels, they become surrounded by real-life language that is used naturally, quickly, and with genuine purpose. Unlike scripted dialogues in textbooks, the English heard during travel is full of real expressions, local accents, natural pauses, and spontaneous reactions. This creates an environment where learners must pay attention, process information instantly, and adapt quickly to what they hear. Such direct exposure trains the brain to understand English as it is actually spoken, not as it is artificially written or simplified for learners. This authenticity gives learners a clearer sense of how English works in real communication, helping them break out of textbook patterns and develop more natural listening and speaking skills. Another powerful aspect of travel environments is the variety of situations a learner faces throughout the day. They might listen to airport announcements in the morning, ask for directions on the street, talk to a cashier at lunchtime, and hear casual conversations on public transport. Each situation offers different vocabulary, tone, and expressions. This constant variety strengthens adaptability, allowing the learner to adjust their understanding to different contexts. As they repeatedly encounter practical language used for real-life tasks, their vocabulary becomes more functional and their speaking becomes more flexible. These real interactions help learners understand which expressions are formal, which are casual, and which are appropriate in specific moments. Something that is almost impossible to learn solely from books. Travel also encourages learners to step out of their comfort zone. When a person is in a new country, they cannot rely on their native language, which naturally pushes them to use English more frequently. Ordering food, buying tickets, asking questions, or responding to simple greetings all become opportunities for practice. Because these tasks are necessary for daily survival, the learner becomes more motivated to communicate clearly. This motivation leads to faster improvement, deeper memory retention, and more confidence in using English practically rather than academically. The more learners interact, the more they realize that English is not just a school subject, but a living tool for real communication. The constant exposure to real accents further strengthens listening ability. Hearing locals speak at their natural speed trains the ear to handle fast English and catch meaning even when some words are missed. Over time, the learner begins recognizing patterns, tone shifts, and commonly used expressions without needing to translate. This type of natural immersion is one of the most effective pathways to fluency, because the learner experiences the language exactly as native speakers use it every day, turning each moment of travel into a valuable learning opportunity. Asterisk key. Point 5 highlights how practicing with daily interactions such as ordering food, asking for directions, or making simple purchases builds practical skills that learners can use immediately. These everyday situations require short, direct communication, making them perfect opportunities to develop confidence and fluency. When a learner uses English for real tasks, the language becomes more than just grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It becomes a tool for solving problems, expressing needs, and connecting with others. This practical use helps learners internalize common phrases and expressions much faster, because they are linked to real experiences rather than abstract exercises. When someone asks for a menu, buys a ticket, or greets a shopkeeper, the words they use become associated with actions, making them easier to remember and use again in the future. Daily interactions also allow learners to practice listening in a manageable, low-pressure environment. These conversations are usually short and predictable, which helps learners understand the structure and rhythm of natural spoken English. For example, when ordering food, a learner can expect certain questions like "What would you like?" or anything else, because these patterns repeat across different situations. Learners quickly become comfortable responding without hesitation. This consistency builds automaticity, a key component of fluency, because the learner no longer needs to think slowly or translate mentally before speaking. Instead, the phrases begin to flow naturally, helping them communicate more smoothly and confidently. Another benefit of using daily interactions for practice is the opportunity to notice and imitate native speaker behavior. Learners can observe how locals respond politely, how they form quick questions, and how they show appreciation. By copying these small social details, learners develop a natural speaking style that feels authentic rather than stiff or overly formal. Everyday conversations also expose learners to new vocabulary in meaningful context. They learn words related to transportation, shopping, food, weather, or directions simply because they need them in real life. This practical vocabulary feels more relevant and memorable than words learned from a textbook without context. Daily interactions also help learners overcome fear and hesitation. When someone successfully completes a small conversation, even as simple as paying at a store or greeting a receptionist, it boosts their confidence. Each successful exchange becomes a stepping stone, reminding the learner that they can communicate and be understood. Over time, these small wins accumulate and create a strong foundation for longer, more complex conversations. By consistently practicing in everyday situations, learners strengthen their ability to speak clearly, respond quickly, and interact naturally in English. Asterisk key point 6 explains that consistency throughout the day makes shadowing highly effective because it transforms English practice into a natural part of daily life rather than a scheduled task. When learners practice only once in a while, their progress is slow, and the brain struggles to adapt to new sounds and patterns. But when shadowing is done repeatedly, even in small moments, the brain stays connected to the rhythm, pronunciation, and flow of English. Each short practice session strengthens memory, improves listening sensitivity, and increases the learner's ability to imitate natural speech. Consistency creates familiarity, and familiarity removes fear, hesitation, and self-doubt. The more frequently a learner shadows, the more comfortable and confident they feel, because English becomes something they interact with constantly, not occasionally. Another benefit of consistent shadowing is the gradual internalization of natural sentence structures. When learners hear and repeat similar patterns many times throughout the day, those structures become part of their automatic speech. Instead of thinking slowly or translating word for word, learners begin to produce sentences more smoothly because their brain recognizes patterns instantly. This automaticity is essential for fluency, and it can only develop through repeated practice. The beauty of consistent shadowing is that it does not require long sessions. Even a few seconds of repetition while walking, waiting, or traveling help reinforce the language. Small moments of practice accumulate, creating powerful learning momentum that grows stronger every day. Consistency also improves pronunciation because the mouth muscles become trained. Through repeated movement, speaking a new language requires physical adjustment, and these adjustments happen gradually through regular practice. When learners shadow often, their tongue, lips, and jaw become more flexible and used to English sounds. This makes pronunciation clearer, more accurate, and more natural. Over time, the difference becomes noticeable not only to the learner, but also to people they speak with. This physical improvement boosts confidence further and encourages even more practice. Shadowing consistently throughout the day also reduces anxiety. When learners get used to speaking frequently, the act of speaking no longer feels scary or unfamiliar. It becomes a normal habit, something they do without overthinking. This emotional comfort helps them take risks, experiment with new vocabulary, and speak with more freedom. As a result, progress becomes faster and more enjoyable because the learner is no longer held back by fear or hesitation. Consistency is what transforms shadowing from a technique into a powerful, life-changing skill. When learners practice regularly, they grow naturally, confidently, and effortlessly into fluent speakers. And as this habit strengthens, it becomes clear that every small moment of practice brings them one step closer to sounding like a confident, skilled English communicator.